So welcome to another stream of World and Economica Episode 1 Part 3. So yeah, just came from Natsuri's stream. like she's lively as usual. She was doing fan chants and stuff. I miss going to lives. Anyway, previously on our stream, last time Haru escaped the police. Apparently, the police was looking for someone else who looked like him. And from there, we'll resume our stuff. There, yeah, our stream right there. The public parts were, of course, controlled by the government, but the most powerful on the civilian side had to be Emerald Industries, which held the civilian rights to the orbital elevator. By the way, if you were wondering about why the company was named after emeralds, it was because a long time ago people said the moon's core was made of emerald. It was originally a maintenance company, but since this was such a complicated piece of machinery, there weren't many qualified guys who could work on it. This was a textbook example of what would happen if they were also quite crafty. The majority of the infrastructure of the moon was under the umbrella of Emerald Industries and its related subsidiary companies. During the time it took for me to come out of the bathroom, dry myself off, and put on the obviously old t-shirt and pants, I must have interacted with products from 100 to 200 of Emerald Industries' various subsidiaries. This was a totally artificial city. So artificial it would put Las Vegas and Dubai to shame. Even those two were lauded as cities with fountains in the desert. So far are we? Yep. I hadn't seen either city with my own eyes, but I had seen footage of them. People on Earth sure were idiots, I thought candidly to myself. All freshened up? When I came out of the changing room, Lisa was lying back on the sofa. There was a cup of water she'd poured for me on the table. The changing room connected straight into the living room. In it was an old and worn sofa set that she must have picked it up from a dump somewhere, along with a coffee table and a carpet whose corners must have been mended countless times. There was no TV, but there was a computer. Also on the coffee table was a multifunctional terminal that Lisa had been using just now. What had surprised me was the thick book next to it. It was a rare event to see real books on the moon, where space and resources were limited. I had thought until relatively recent that books were simply an application interface format. I didn't realize that things that resembled what was drawn on the screen actually existed. People who came from Earth made fun of people who grew up on the moon for things like that. However, from my point of view, people from Earth were the ones who had something messed up in their heads, since they still stuffed these ridiculously bulky books into places like libraries. Is it rare to see a real book? I came to when Lisa asked me a question. Once more, she had the multifunctional terminal in her hand, most likely reading a book again. Well, if I had snapped back saying that I don't know what I don't know, her treating me like some naive idiot would piss me off. And thus I mumbled my reply while putting on a poker face. But Lisa didn't make fun of me. Well, they certainly take up space. They also get dirty easily, so you'd have to take good care of them. Furthermore, we couldn't really search them, so the digital version is 100 times better. I instantly realized that she was doing this out of consideration for me. It was as if she were some kindergarten teacher who had a good idea of what would cause immigrants on Earth and moonbred kids to get into a fight. And that is I pointed out at the thick but worn out book on the table. There were some gold color alphabet looking characters on the back cover, but I couldn't quite parse them. B-I-B-L? That's definitely B-L. No, that's Bible. Uh, for a sec. Hello? Yep. We still have audio. Anyway, this to me was the most important book in the world, and thus I bought it with me from Earth. Okay, even here, religion, definitely. Even though I parted with Julie, who had been with me since the day I was born. Oh, she's my pet dog, by the way. Even if I parted with Julie, why did she even repeat that? I could not bear to leave that book back on Earth. Lisa laid the mobile terminal aside and carefully stroked the front cover of the tattered book. Upon seeing that, I flashed back to when I was a naive kid, being patted on the head by my parents' hands, roughened from working outdoors. When did you come here from Earth? We got chased out of our place when I was 11. With that, my parents made the bold move to apply for lunar immigration. We didn't really have money and thus had to apply through a commoners category, which had ridiculous odds. Well, my parents' professions were kind of special, and since the NOAA system was still in effect, we managed to get placed into a preferential category. NOAA system. It was how people referred to the system for the preservation of multiculturalism. Though I guess you wouldn't know that about it unless you were involved with it. Well, there was this story about Noah's Ark. Well, there was some legend or oral tradition or teaching or whatever that talked about when the world had turned to evil and was destroyed by a huge flood. Good people and pairs of animals rode out the flood in a boat and went on to create a virtuous world after the water receded. Something like that. My parents were both theological scholars. I guess they needed people of that old profession as well. This was the first time I heard the term theological scholar. Lisa picked up the nearby terminal and showed me the dictionary entry. They were apparently people who studied religious teachings. I was truly surprised that people who gave up their lives to such useless things were here on the moon. And thus, this book was like my soul, to someone like me who had been raised in such a household. There were so many authors depending on which chapter it was, but it was mostly written around 2,000 years ago. It's actually the best-selling book on Earth, you know. Okay, still best-selling book after people started living on the moon. Oh, is it that interesting? Lisa laughed out loud when I started to show a bit of an interest in the book while looking at it. Haha, well, no, sorry. If you ask me whether it was interesting or not, I'd rather say it was interesting in its own way. But it isn't really that kind of book. This is called the Bible. Remember the figure you saw in the church? This was the book written by the disciples of that guy pinned up there. It's a book of religious teaching, so to speak. They estimate that over 1 billion copies had been sold. 1 billion copies. That's because it could be found everywhere on Earth. It was translated into the words spoken by people all over the Earth. So in other words, everyone on Earth reads it. If only that were the case. Yeah, actually. Question mark appeared on my face when I heard Lisa's reply. Are we really gonna discuss the Bible in this? Well, let's leave it to the story, I guess. The Earth's population is roughly 6.5 billion, even in an age where 700,000 of those could come to the moon. Roughly a third of the people on Earth couldn't read, and 2/3 had no surroundings where they could sit down and read a book. The remaining fortunate 1/3 had tons of other forms of entertainment. There were few people reading the Bible nowadays, even among Christians. Even at the church I attended, there were few people who knew that there were four books that comprise the Gospels, and even less people knew the names of the four authors. You probably don't understand how sad this fact is. Sorry, totally don't have a clue here. Definitely. Well, that's alright. I've already got a heavy load due to having to carefully watch over this old church. Still, knowledge passes on when people cross paths. Trivia used to refer to wisdom, and world's original meaning was that of a three-way intersection where people would cross paths. I had wondered what would be the point of having all these lost people meeting at such an intersection. It was perhaps a sign that I realized I should be a shepherd, watching over sheep. A shepherd. I've seen images of sheep being herded by sirens, electrical fences, people while researching certain potential. Okay. Seeing me totally drawing a blank, Lisa laughed weakly and said, "Sorry, it's just a metaphor. I actually haven't seen a real shepherd either. I guess it wasn't just a matter of not knowing stuff because I was born on the moon." I was at least a bit relieved by that. I'm pretty much that type of person. People would certainly wonder if I came to the moon to do such a thing. Well, I do think that. Lisa chuckled at my frank statement. Well, now let's talk about you, okay? Yeah, let's talk about... Wait, not really. That's not a nice thing either. Well, since she went to the trouble saving me the police, bringing me here since it looked like I had no place to go, and even letting take a bath, my good character dictated that I answer her. Well, yeah, we should probably tell her. I come from a settlement village on the outskirts of the eastern outer district. Oh, that great place with all the greenery, right? Outsiders all say that. Is it just because we're all from the Stone Age? Haha, people would come to the moon. We're all city dwellers back then. When they were on Earth, they missed their greenery. I was beginning to feel that I was blanketed and confused by a high level of logic. Okay, I know what's wrong at this point. Are the cities on Earth full of greenery then? Well, I guess the way I worded it was kind of bad. Even on Earth, there wasn't that much greenery in the cities for some reason. People were attracted to the natural outdoors from times long past. Perhaps it's something ingrained in us. Aren't you the same? I was about to refute her point, but decided against it. In either case, I ran away from a home over there. Okay, your name. Is it okay to ask? Lisa asked me without showing any signs of trying to forcing me. Like I'd be able to get away from not answering that if I said no. That's fine if you don't want to. Dot. But it would be kind of inconvenient to call for you, so I'd like some sort of name. The girl you carried on your back, she's called Hagana. It's not her real name. Huh? Well, it's not like she doesn't want to open up to me, but she's like a wild animal in that she's very cautious about things. Hagana's originally a word from the language of the Wanderers. Well, actually, does anything come to mind when I use the term Wanderers? Wanderers? Hagana sounds like hiragana or something. No idea. I guess that's to be expected, but I guess the moon bred being free from Earth had this kind of meaning. Sorry, talking to myself again. It's my first time talking to a kid who was born and bred on the moon. People born and bred on the moon, there's still probably not even 1,000 or so. People working in Newton City said that it was due to the fact that many people weren't able to have children. Most of the people who came from Earth were 10 years old at the youngest when they rode the orbital elevator. There was a huge difference in gravity between the moon and the Earth, and thus there were issues with their body. Of course, to them, Earth was their birthplace, and the common sense they possessed came from there as well. Well, this is really This really is like trivia, the whole paths crossing and exchanging wisdom thing. Lisa smiled with satisfaction while uttering these words. If that girl clad in black, Hagana could have considered strange, then Lisa must also be strange for helping and harboring me. Anyway, even in this day and age and living on the moon, she's all into religion and cherishes her real books. To put it bluntly, I wondered if she was a social outcast. However, I had a favorable impression of Lisa even though she didn't seem to take part in the competitions that rage on in this competitive city. It was true she wasn't pushing ahead, but it didn't feel like she was falling back either. Even in this low gravity environment, Lisa appeared to have her feet planted firmly on the ground. Okay. She looked to me as if she enjoyed just living her life. I was a bit moved seeing that people like that actually existed. I had thought that there were three types of people on the moon: the rough and the crude from my village who were refined only in speech, the decadent people from the outer sections who couldn't be helped, and the residents of Mutant City, who took advantage of the low gravity to jump up to lofty heights. These were my thoughts as I looked at Lisa, who was smiling happily to herself. It feels like she could at least be trusted. Yoshiharu. Hmm? Kaora Yoshiharu. Oh, your name. Yeah, what else could I be talking about? It's my real name. So if report me, they'd quickly notify my parents. After my blunt answer, Lisa looked at me for a moment, then a smile spread over her face. I see, I got it. Well then, how about just Hal? Like Hal Jordan? Even if I called you by just your first name, wouldn't it really narrow down who you are? It would be obvious that you were the kid of Japanese immigrants, but if it were just Hal, then that wouldn't be an issue. Of course, there wasn't really any award for turning someone in, but the fact that someone. Wait a minute. Hmm. Okay, I have some cats here right now in my room in the virtual world. Apparently, they don't like the coldness of the air conditioner. They'll get used to it. This was a good thing for me, but suspicion had become a daily thing with my 3 months of wandering around. Lisa noticed the look of suspicion on my face and said, Hehe, well if this were Earth, I could just say, the Lord's will be done and smile, and everyone would accept it. Totally have no clue what you're talking about. Well, that's true. This is the moon after all, although sometimes I start getting the urge to put one of those on. That was what she said. And I wondered what she meant, though from her expression she'd probably just dodge the question if I asked her. However, it pains me that it's Hagano who'd fit better in them. Looks like my hair color is too light. Lisa talked to herself while brushing her hair with her fingers. It wasn't on Hagana's level, but I thought she had beautiful straight hair. Back in the village, everyone placed blonde women on a pedestal, but I kind of like girls with deep colored hair. Oh, okay. Guess Haru is saying that Hagana is her type. He's his type. To put it bluntly, like someone's in front of me right now. Oh, it's Lisa actually? Speaking of which, I wonder what that girl's doing now. It's almost time to sleep, but perhaps she wasn't planning on taking a bath. And right after she said that, I heard the door open on the other side of the hall, leading to the room, and footsteps afterwards, as if that someone was waiting just for the moment when Lisa was about to get up from the sofa. Supposedly, there were only Lisa and Hagana here, so logically it must have been Hagana. So there was no reason to be surprised, but I did get a shock when I spotted Hagana coming in from the dark hallway. No, we will get uh we'll get demonetized with this. Ah, very funny game. I didn't know that would happen. That's not nice at all. I'll probably oh my god. I didn't expect that to happen. But I'll just try to narrate until this scene passes on, okay? Or maybe the text box would hide it. Would that be acceptable? I have no idea at all. Except the camera freaking focused earlier when anyway. The monetized we're not even monetized in the first place. Anyway, yeah. I'm going to resume it. I think it's pretty acceptable. Is it? Let's just to be sure, let's put a where is it? Let's put a sensor. I'm putting a sensor over it. Okay, yeah. There we go. Hey, Hagana. Lisa got up hurriedly from the sofa. The Hagana in question squinted her eyes, wearing a surprised, puzzled expression. I guess is it enough? There. Okay, we're back. In her hands were ridiculously neatly folded pajamas, what looked like a change of underwear, but what got us all in a fluster was her appearance. She was wearing short shorts that revealed her slender long legs all the way up to her hips, and a sleeveless shirt through which you could almost see her chest. Haven't I told you many times never to wander around in something like that? Isn't it fine, just it's not showing? Oh my god. She replied, surprised at how angry Lisa was, and went quickly on the changing room. It looked like Lisa couldn't figure out what to say and simply growled in front of the changing room door. As for me, to my greatest stress, I averted my eyes and my thought, okay, I guess it's gone. Her yes, it was white. But was oddly childlike compared to the color of her clothing and her ridiculous chickiness. Well, it wasn't bad, but seeing that kind of underwear beneath her totally black stockings would kind of be a letdown, I thought to myself. Then I noticed Lisa glaring at me. Erase that from your memory. I couldn't just brush it off by laughing at her ridiculously serious face because of her scary glare. I nodded twice obediently. Shish, because she's so hard-headed. Lisa sighed and shook her head. Even though it looked like she had all the power here, she had no way of controlling Hagana's thoughts. It really did seem like Hagana's hobby was to shelter runaways, Lisa's hobby. That was fine, but I felt inclined to show her respect for her words. It was a strange thing. You try to show at least a little shame too, okay? It was the first time I'd ever heard that in my life, but I nodded. I possessed manners that would lead people to think I seriously wanted to distance myself from the crude culture of my home village, where people who wouldn't get naked in front of people of the same gender were considered cowardly. However, Lisa waited for my nod and added an additional line. I'm looking forward to your manners the next time we eat. Ah. What a cheap move, I mentally yelled at Lisa. I guess in the end, this lady was the type to take you by surprise if you let your guard down. Was anyone watching? Oh, okay. Lisa was laughing merrily as she returned to the sofa and started playing with her multifunctional terminal. I had already taken a bath, but I wasn't quite sleepy yet, so I sat on the floor at once and opened my PC. A bit afterwards, there was a quarrel between Hagan and Lisa. Hagan figured that since we were facing the other way and engrossed in what we were doing, she could just walk back to her room with only a towel on her shoulder, whereas Lisa tried to push her back into the changing room. Lisa was frantic, saying that this had been a place with better manners before, but I thought perhaps it was a warmer place before, because it was just two females living together. I felt that I had come across a great place. Definitely. Achievement unlock alter ego. Okay. Even though we had separate rooms, they were clean. If helping people out like that was a hobby, then this unhealthy interest in this church thing and this crucified man was probably also not that bad. That was a funny occurrence. I'm gonna include it in the highlights later. Morning. The first thing I did was confirm that I could survive another day. I figured I'd inspect my things and decide to look for the bag I was clutching before. But when I realized it was gone, a shivers went down my spine. I sprang to my feet, but when I realized I was in bed, I suddenly remembered what happened last night. This wasn't a booth in a dodgy internet cafe, but a house connected to a church managed by a strange woman named Lisa. It had been a long time since I'd been able to sleep in a place where I could stretch out my limbs. It wasn't so bad to wake up without being in pain. Excuse me. Good morning, you're up early. This is a nice BGM. Sounds familiar. Still in the worn out old clothing I borrowed last night, I walked into the living room where Lisa was sitting in a corner with a computer. Looking at the book-like organic display, it didn't look like she was just messing around. Except for Sundays, I usually get up around now. You're pretty disciplined for a runaway. I'm impressed. It's none of your business. Lisa shrugged her shoulders, turned back to the displays, and hit a number of keys before standing up from her chair. Do you want breakfast? Judging from your name, your parents must be Japanese. Oh yeah, you already told me that. I wonder if I have any rice. Even with that said, I didn't really have any appetite. That's alright, I have got a chocolate bar in my bag. I want some coffee. Wow, Haru, you're very demanding. When I said that, Lisa looked surprised. Her beautiful almond-shaped eyes widened and seemed frozen in place. As long as my eyes have the black in them, I will always try to have 3 real meals a day. Your eyes aren't even black. Yeah, it's dark green, olive, kinda. It's a figure of speech. I looked away in disdain like a spoiled brat. In the end, Lisa prepared some bread, bacon, and eggs. A long time ago, the folks on Earth couldn't have imagined journeying beyond their planet and still being able to eat the same things there that they did at home. In other words, they imagined food to be some strange colored supplement in a tube with who knows what kind of vaguely food-like nutrients in it. Sure, you could find stuff like that, but immigrants were surprised to find out that things on the moon's surface seem really no different from Earth. I didn't think too much about it. Do you have a net connection here? Asking the right things. Definitely internet connection. Well, he's going to do stocks anyway, not Facebook. Is Facebook still around at this point? I don't know. To me, A net connection was more important even than a silicon dioxide factory producing fresh oxygen. Theoretically, no matter where you were in this lunar city, you should be within range of a wireless signal. Or so the plan was originally, for where the cost benefit performance of maintenance wasn't high, if the relay station broke, things wouldn't just stay that way. Besides, if you look around, you could find public institutions with terminals free to use, so places with no wireless reception carve out the area like Swiss cheese. If I couldn't use the net here, I would have to find a place like the Big Ball Cafe again. However, I was hopeful because the computer Lisa was using was connected to the endless sea that was the net. What? Are you some kind of net addict? No, I'm not. Given that I also slept at that net cafe, I suppose you could say that I was. However, as I turned on my mobile PC, I was lost as to how I should respond. It wasn't against the law to say that I was trading stocks as a minor. But from that... Okay, let me mute this. I forgot to mute. Anyway, from that point of view, it wasn't a problem to just say so. The problem was that I was raking in the cash by normal standards. Even for the sixth outer section, this appeared to be a lower income area. The inhabitants here earn about 1,000 mules a month, 2,000 mules, or better yet, did anyone here hold down any steady work? It wasn't very clear if this church had any money. A good poker player never shows his hand, or they say. So I should assume that they had some hidden away monetary reserves. I lowered my head like a turtle as I spoke. Something more important than even a name, perhaps. Lisa didn't even persist in asking my real name. At my words, Lisa's hand slowly stopped and she looked right at me. Looking at her calm but displeased face, I was ready to say that I was enraptured by the pursuit of money. Okay, gonna drink some virtual water right now. It isn't anything illegal, right? And the words that came out after that were those that I was sure would let me off the hook. That is definitely not the case, you have my word. In that case, I won't ask about it. It was unexpected. Lisa seemed to mouth those words a number of times. She smiled in slight puzzlement as she spoke. Boys are creatures who die without secrets. In my heart, I screamed out against being treated like a child. But were my lips to move, I would sound just like one. I chose to stay silent as I logged into my trading account. Those thoughts had long since been expelled from my mind completely. My concern turned toward the up and down movements of digits and flow of money it referred to. The market had fallen into disarray. One particular market on Earth was shaken up, and its repercussions were felt by the financial markets that tied the world together. Apparently, it was something about Russia sending forces into satellite countries because of natural gas fields. Typical stuff. With the conclusion of the Cold War, what brought the world together happened in an instant. After the panic of nuclear weapons in a small country in the Caucasus region, dubbed the Second Cuban Missile Crisis, mankind finally took a real look at the situation before them. Although the Cuban Missile Crisis was one of the actions that led to the end of Cold War, it was also a confrontational between superpowers. In the Second Cuban Missile Crisis, it wasn't a confrontational between superpowers that brought the world together, but a confrontation between anarchic terrorists and the countries of the world. The result was complete cooperation of the world and the desire to look towards the stars in preparation for another such moment. Everyone knew that there would always be disputes when it came to the utilization of land on Earth. These issues would be pigeonholed into a faraway place above and away, literally. With the development of the space elevator, major technological breakthroughs were made at breakneck speed during the development of lunar cities. However, just as eventual all memories fade over time, the moon strayed from their original goal as the world's utopia. After being firmly established, much like countries all over the world, it sought sovereignty and independence to the extent of maintaining its own independent military force. Thus, the countries on Earth turned their gaze from the sky to the ground again, having woken from their dream. This was the gist of what I understood about the history of the world. I knew more minute details about this, but delving too deep would make it difficult to see the big picture. My knowledge was entirely tied to stock trading after all. If there were to be a disturbance in the region of some country on Earth, it would probably have a large impact on the people who lived there and the corporations which operated there. But it would have little global impact. And because there'd be little global impact, tragedies would continue on Earth. This was something immigrants from my town, who were coming from particularly dreadful places on Earth, had said, which had left the biggest impression on my mind. Looking down at the Earth from space elevator, I could see that all the dreadful problems out there grew smaller and smaller, much like the place of my birth. Even to this place, there were places on Earth where missiles fell more than rain did. There was a race in the number of unskilled laborers wanting to come to the moon, especially those who no longer wanted to live on Mother Earth anymore. The real kicker that the people in the developed world seemed to know absolutely nothing about the world outside of their boundaries. Borders. Was it boundaries? Borders. Here, everyone more or less knew about these rising problems when it came to this energetic bunch in their stubbornly resolute mindset. What was hidden eventually became known. Their mantra was like, "We will not allow this to become another Earth." It was a great concept. I'd like more of this. That's what's possible, actually. Maybe every utopia turns that way. Huh. Strangely, even when I was completely focused on stock trading, the more I concentrated, the more another part of me started waking up. It felt like I had two personalities within me. When I sighed after completing my trades, it really did feel I'd log out of the world of the net. It was the feeling of the two halves of me joining back into one. To the speed space. The warp speed pace of stock trading is like the brakes were hit as gravity and time returned back to normal. It wasn't all that bad, at least until I re-evaluated the results of today's trades. I'd been glued to the screen since morning without stopping to eat or drink, and I was about up over 7,000 moles for the day. If there were smooth days, I think things would go the way they did today, and continue at this pace. I'd been nerve-wrackingly calculating how things would go from last week. I could feel the fatigue in my body as I fell over from my cross-legged sitting position and lay down. Only in this moment was my mind blank. Even in my dreams, I'd be handling financial transactions, so this moment was probably more relaxing when I was sleeping. Even the most effective leaders on Earth, holding on to their hegemony, were said to spend anywhere from few minutes to a maximum of an hour sleeping. I was very aware of this. Be right back. Okay. My pet cat had to to go outside. Anyway, after all, somewhere in the world was working, continuing to effect some change. Hence, sleeping meant to sleep a small fraction from the forefront. Even for the goal of conquering the stock market, I had to partition out the limits of my brain capacity, thus total control was still a far out concept. However, one day I will conquer the market, extract endless amounts of money from it, and pile it all together to reach out and journey to undiscovered lands, opening the door to the next destination for mankind after the moon. It was like I stopped my brain cells from relaxing and filled my disconnected brain with a new seething blood flow. I took a deep breath and opened my eyes, ready to get up in one motion. What stopped my movement in its tracks, along with my thought processes, was purely an accident. Is this gonna be like that accident earlier? Let's see. When I opened my eyes, everything in front of me was all pitch black. No, rather, it was a pitch black cloth. One part of it had a unique and continuous contour to it, while another part appeared to be zigzagging layers of pleats. And beyond that, I could see through a break in the black fabric of what appeared to be some sort of white fabric. Oh my god. Let's go back to censoring this. It passed nimbly over my head. What came next into my vision was Hagana's face, as if she noticed something suddenly and turned around. Why did you open your eyes? Are you an idiot? Those were words that didn't seem out of place, even if you appended it with that. She wasn't acting shy or embarrassed, and apparently she wasn't even angry. Instead, Agana looked disdainfully at me. It was probably a bad idea to have lain down at rest right along the shortest path to the kitchen from the living room. Even then, Hagana should be more careful wearing something as defended as a skirt. Besides, her lack of shame would make even mannequins look inhibited. Just thinking of that made advantage the situation a bit lacking. Without a doubt, finding any excitement in the contents of Hagana's skirt seemed rather like a losing proposition. I like to stay a rational person if possible. That was why I got up and returned to my computer screen. Okay. Nothing happened. It's safe. Where is Lisa? I heard Hagana's voice coming from her direction. She had a white mustache around her mouth while after drinking milk, which certainly was quite a feat in nutritional intake and more amazing than the chemical synthesis that created it. Like I'd know. After having make her a fool out of me on top of having that idiot white mustache on her face, I found myself rather irritated at my rather short answer. Hagana showed her disapproval with a raised eyebrow. Haven't you been here the whole time? How come you don't know? Are you an idiot? I started feeling like every sentence she spoke would have those words tagged silently onto the end. It was true that I had been here the whole time, but I did not notice her getting up and leaving me behind during my deep concentration. I considered explaining that to her, but I found it to be so annoying that I just disregarded the thought. And in doing so, I heard the darnest thing from Hagana. I was surprised. In fact, you could say that it was as if my brain shorted out, and for a brief moment everything was blank. I turned around and just looked at Hagana with a "what" expression on my face. Hagana looked back at me without any expression on hers, seemingly saying that I was nothing but useless garbage. No matter how much of an effort I was making at being a gentleman, I realized that I was reaching my limit with her. There was no way this absolutely cheeky girl was going to behave. The circuits in my head shifted gear, switching onto the adrenaline. On the adrenaline. My arms and legs seemed to have magically become supple. I swear if she said even another word, I was going to tackle her to the ground. When it came to inflicting pain without leaving any marks on the face or body, I happened to know a thing or two about that. Why do you even know that kind of thing? Don't don't do that to a girl, Haru. Only thought in my mind was the delusion of seeing Hagana's cheeky face, streaked with tears, begging for forgiveness. It would be good for Hagana to lift up the lid to the abyss of hell. That would teach her. As I stared at Hagana with an icy glare, something happened that inhibited my rage. I'm back! Lisa returned through a door in the corridor that probably led to the church proper. In her hand was a burlap bag. Okay, be right back. It was a city policy to reuse everything that was reusable as much as possible. This led me to believe that her burlap bag was certainly an example of that, given all the multiple patch marks on it. Hmm? As soon as she entered the living room, Lisa seemed to sense what was going on. Or rather, it would be obvious, even to an idiot, what with Hagana silently staring daggers at me. I paid Hagana no attention at all as I returned my attention back to the computer screen. Hagana. When Lisa called her name, Hagana turned to her like a dog to its owner. You'll kill off brain cells if you stay angry like that. The heck was that? I looked up and all of things saw Hagana nod in agreement. Are you so easily convinced by something said to trick children? As I looked dumbfounded, excuse me, Hagana seemed to have given up dealing with me and proceeded to rub her fingers along her forehead. And then she closed her eyes, skillfully pouring milk into her cup, and had a second drink. Before she drank it, she went through this mantra. Calcium appeases anger. Exactly. What? What? The only thing I knew that was that Hagana hated my guts. I was sure that bit about calcium was a snide remark at me. It wasn't so much that her anger had subsided as it was expressed in a different manner. Hagana finished her milk and then watched Lisa throw her groceries into the refrigerator. Lisa, auditorium key. How? Oh, didn't I give it to you? You didn't give it to me when I also checked out everywhere just in case. The only other possibility was that Lisa still had it, or he stole. Alright, hold on a minute. This always happens when I make a habit of putting slim items in my wallet. Will you have enough time? Even if I'm late, I will have to precisely explain everything. The fact that it was Lisa's fault, not mine. She said it without even skipping a beat. It wasn't something one would be happy about, but as Lisa was unfazed by her words, it looked like this was fairly normal. That's true. Well, you'd better explain my screw up clearly then. Yes, a simple reason. Hagana said that as she took the key and turned away. The hem of her skirt turned slightly in her sync with the graceful movement of her long, beautiful black hair. Her footsteps faded away as she left the living room, and I could hear the door to her room close. Left there, Lisa sighed with relief and let out a strained laugh as she looked at me. Soon after she closed her door, I heard it open and close again as Hagana returned to the living room. In her hand was a small black bag. I'll be on my way. Itadakimasu. Iterashai. Hagana only talked to Lisa and without a single word to me. She left through the hallway. Or rather, her cold glance at me seemed to say, "Oh my, you are still here." Well, appeared that Hagana had identified me unconditionally as her enemy. Hmm. Let me take a drink for a bit. She really is a bit of a tough girl to deal with. It seemed that Lisa's mutterings were calling me out as a being at fault, but rather were somewhat supportive of me. A bit. Those were the first words out of my mouth. Just a bit. She's really a good girl. Is that just a standard line to say for someone that has issues? Lisa put a hand on her cheek as she looked down with a somewhat cold expression in her eyes. I'm not someone who cold-hearted like you, I would think. Okay already. You don't need to be angry. Mm-hmm. That's better. Lisa smiled from ear to ear as she folded her empty bag carefully. Well, what should I do? Did you want to have dinner earlier? Huh? I gruffly retorted a question I wasn't expecting. You couldn't really skip out on lunches now, could you? In fact, you didn't even really answer my question at all. What have you been doing? Judging by her surprised face, I could see that she wasn't trying to cross-examine me. I scratched my head and just mumbled in response. That's fine. I'm going to make dinner, but what do you want to do? Do you want to eat here? Of course, it is cheaper than eating out, but I make no guarantees about the taste. You'd better not make such bad jokes. I wanted to respond instinctively, but going out now to find a place for food was just much of a pain. If nothing else, I didn't have many qualms about that anyway. If you are offering food, then here is fine. But I don't want to deal with the cops anyway. As long as it isn't poisonous, I'm fine with it. Not a problem, but if you want to eat now, I'll start cooking then. Well? Huh? Well, wouldn't it be a pain to have to cook multiple items? That is true. Well, that's a surprise. Didn't think you'd be concerned. I might have run away from home, but doesn't mean I'm sort of uncivilized delinquent. Lisa lightly sighed at my instance. That sounds like something a common thug would say. Oh, shut up. Regardless of whether I could cook now or later, I'm just letting you know that Hagana will be home late. Actually, when I'm not watching out for her, she doesn't properly feed herself, so I was planning on eating with her. However, after seeing what happened earlier, I kind of wonder if you are the same as well. It would appear that there was some great animosity towards me from Hagana. I had no idea what gotten her panties in a bunch. Did I cop a feel at the first time I met her? I don't really remember at all, but she didn't really have much to cop a feel. Dude. Very rude. Very rude. Of course, it is my intention for all of us to sit at the dinner table in friendship. That came out of my mouth without thinking. Such a calm, pacifist opinion isn't what I want to hear. Well, a ball that falls to the ground hits with the most force and impact. But things eventually subside, do they not? Such approaches solve many a problem. By my personal philosophy, I wanted to protest, but I felt relieved somehow. I was thinking it was something like shaking hands as a way of reconciliation. That would be fine, too. Believe it or not, I look at things pragmatically. That would be a big help. After I said that, I took a deep breath and returned to the subject at hand. I wouldn't mind eating earlier. Well, alright. I'll get to it then. Thank you. At my sudden politeness, Lisa giggled to herself like a spoiled rat. Out came bean soup, fish manure. Manure? That's not manure. 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 I guess it's manure. Manure is it's something else, definitely. And bread. Fish manure. I have no idea how it's that red. The beans were grown by a neighbor. The fish was a type of trout that was shared from a bunch fish out of canal around the time. And the bread was cheap leftovers from the bakery apparently. I thought they might have been leftovers of me, or maybe even poisonous, but it all tasted so good that I had left stunned. So, how much is this going to run me? I asked Lisa as she was making tea. She gave me a bit of grim look. Perhaps she didn't like talking about money. Roughly 10 moles a day. Isn't that a bit much? I imagine she didn't go out to eat often. It went without saying that the exchange rate for mole was fairly high, so imports from Earth were rather cheap. Lunar cities import a lot of daily essentials, so the effects of the exchange rate were quite obvious. When I looked at Lisa with dissatisfaction, Lisa answered back with a serious face. This includes the lodging. You could have said that earlier. Well, when it comes to money matters, you're to the point, aren't you? It seemed that she was trying to test me. With that, she handed me a cup of tea, but it wasn't like the green tea I used to drink at home. It was the type of Chinese tea that used fermented tea leaves, but the name wasn't coming to me. Of course, it's not like I'm having fun running away from home only to return when I am out of money, you know. What? But at this rate, won't things get worse? Even if your conviction is strong, what will you do from here? So that's what this was all about. I got it now. Though I can put you up, as you can see around you, we aren't exactly financial well off here. If you run out of resources, it will not be possible to support you. Basically, I will need to work for my meals, right? Exactly. The motto of our church is everyone has a responsibility. A theologian a millennium ago once said that manual labor is sacred. I think it's not the theology that came from the Bible. Lisa, did you even read the Bible? It's from the Bible. I'm pretty sure of that. I have no objections. Oh, how honest. Obviously. In that case, I can introduce you to a variety of jobs. What would you be interested in? Huh? While I was out shopping, I gathered together some information from here and there. There are people I've known for a long time, so I can trust them. There are people who've come from hardship, so people like you, well, you can understand. In any case, it seems a lot of them are short-handed. Would you be interested in working in the kitchen, delivery work, construction, or cleaning? Lisa smiled from the other end of the table. Wait, weren't all of these low-wage jobs for unskilled laborers? I reached out for a neglected piece of bread when my hand was stopped lightly. You know the saying, if man will not work, he shall not eat. How much will I make at each of those 4 jobs anyway? Well, the highest would be for delivery. I've been told that you can earn 9 moles an hour for it. I'm not sure what kind of expression I had on my face, but whatever it wasn't good. Lisa reacted accordingly. You have a problem with it? It's 9 moles. It is true that you will have to do deliveries to places of different distances, but you do have a surprising amount of endurance. Might have been fine with the well-laid out Green City and Newton City, but it made me shiver to think about making deliveries in the mess was the outer sections. 9 moles an hour only amounted to 100 moles a day. The rate of earnings here was pretty low, given the fact I'd earned over 10,000 moles at the best in a week. This was out of the question. Besides, we will have to done in the daytime, wouldn't it? Of course. She stuffed that precarious piece of bread down her throat as she looked menacingly at me. This isn't a job for kids, or is that your intention? No, that's not it. Then what? Just wanted to say it isn't something worth it for me to. After that, Lisa opened her mouth as if if to say something, but I didn't really have to have an argument about it, so I reached into my pocket and I produced some cash that was bundled separately from my wallet. Of course, I kept it a specific purpose or for some shopping. It wasn't really a large amount of money. I took the largest notes from the model and placed 2 bills on the table. In any case, here's 200 moles, so please let me stay here for 20 days. Honestly, if you kick me out, that would be troublesome. I guess Lisa doesn't understand where this money is coming from. Besides, if you took Hagan out of the picture, this rather cozy place was dirt cheap for 10 moles for a day. For one evening, Big Bull Cafe costed 15 moles. Food was extra. You never knew when cops would come strolling in. There wasn't any security in the booths either. Staying here 20 days for 200 moles wasn't a bad investment at all. I looked at Lisa. When I did so, Lisa was looking at the two 100 mole notes I placed before her. Is that okay? When I asked her, Lisa was taken aback as she looked at me. Right, of course, I wouldn't kick you out, but I was a bit concerned about her change in expression. Maybe she thought they were counterfeit. It isn't dirty money or anything. At my words, Lisa looked a bit flustered as she shook her head. I'm sorry, it isn't that. Then what was it? Or at least that was I was tempted to say. But given the circumstances, I said nothing. Okay, I think it's already 1 hour since I started. But I guess we can extend a little bit more this time. 1 hour and 30 minutes for this stream. Let me check if is this still on? Yeah, it is still on. Everything looks fine. Besides, we'd already deviated from talking about those crappy jobs, so I didn't want to put an end to this discussion. There isn't any problems. I'd like for you to take it. I also want you to not bother me for these 20 days. In my mind, I wanted to add those words, but my face didn't reflect that. Just to make sure, I had some bean soup and helped myself to some bread. Lisa still looked confused, but then she sighed and nodded her head slowly. Okay, I'll take it. For a brief moment, things proceeded smoothly under this roof. Then, right after I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But what will you do after this? This woman was persistent. I couldn't hide my displeasure as my poker face cracked. I turned to Lisa and could think of only one thing to say. Let me think about it 20 days from now. This wasn't going to fly, was it? I looked at Lisa, but it seemed that she had given up. I'm not one to talk in this case, I suppose. Oh, nothing. But you really should think about what you will do after these 20 days. A lifetime is long, and you'll be surprised at how even something like breathing in this city will cost you something. Right. Even though she'd get angry at talking about money, those words she said were particularly powerful. Well, perhaps she hated money because she didn't have much. For some reason that seemed unlikely, I finished up the remaining menuera. Is it even red like that? And sopped up the rest of the soup in my bowl, with some bread. Lisa took the two banknotes I gave her and placed them in a small accessory box hidden away in the corner of a shelf filled with cookware. It's not like she's a kid stealing some pocket money, but seeing Lisa like this led me to believe that perhaps she had her heads in the cloud at this moment. My impression of Lisa was that she was an annoying and stupid woman, but at the same time, she was a mature woman who surprisingly had both feet planted firmly on the ground. This was a bit different from before. I could only think of her as being unreliable and airheaded. I wondered why. I was a bit curious, but everyone had their circumstances. After re-evaluating, something else came to mind to ask. Hey. Yes. She looked like she snapped to her senses as she looked up after closing her accessory case and turned to face me. What is it? We were talking how everyone has to do their own job earlier, but does that mean even that girl works? It's Hagana, not that girl. Hey, she referred to me like that too, you know. Can't you reach a compromise? Besides, she's mostly just shy towards other people. To me, she's a very good girl. Yesterday, it didn't look like she was listening to you though. In any case, it's Hagana, okay? Hagana. I know. Give me a break here. Jeez. We were talking about Hagana, right? Yeah, she works. For real? For real. I bit my lip as she mimicked me. I got annoyed when she said that I sounded like a street thug, but to copy me like that was irritating. Stop trying to act tough and talk normally. Be quiet, you. I retorted as if I didn't have anything else to say, as if I were a spoiled child. Even though it was unbearable, it seemed like I was no match for Lisa. But it is true though, she is working as a teacher. What? I wasn't putting on airs. I was honestly surprised. Mouth agape, I looked at Lisa and repeated, "A teacher? Her? Yep, that girl is very smart after all. Well, she does rather look down on others. On that, it is true that I cannot deny it, but in a way, she's always had that look in her eyes. It bothers her sometimes as well, so please don't get too mad at that for me, okay?" Huh. I gave a snort of laughter and turned away. I wasn't laughing at her expense, just thinking about how Agana was self-conscious of her appearance dug at my heartstrings a bit. That was somewhat cute. She gathers up the neighborhood's children and teaches them. She really works hard. I used to do something like that in the past, but I wasn't good at it. If it is about the social sciences, then I can handle it. But there isn't exactly demand for that. Huh, is that so? Agana specializes in the sciences. She is especially good with math. It's good to have knowledge in what is useful in the world. I attended university here on the moon, you know, but my concentration was in Catholicism in medieval Europe and its relation to Aboriginal religion. What the heck is that? But yeah, there isn't anyone on the moon who would be interested in studying Earth historically, much less religious history. Even the university professor that had come here to take charge of the curriculum had to earnestly beg me to keep the research going, which was a bit of a shock. Wait a minute. Well, if you were trying to pay for classes, then definitely math or physics. Or if you had even more money than chemistry or biology. Though medical school is a different matter. In any case, I am well aware of all of this. Exactly. I heard all the time that it's if not for money, then there's nothing to study. It's a deplorable situation. I didn't know whether or not it was that deplorable, but the only problem was that Lisa had chosen to live her life on the moon. In order to succeed on the moon, there was no time to study literature or history. It would be better to major in math heavy scientific fields or focus on economics or management if one were not scientifically inclined. But if Lisa were to have any regrets over that, they would be pretty minuscule. I was able to trust her because somehow it did appear that she had her feet planted firmly on the ground. However, that girl is a teacher though. I mumbled to myself as I tried to visualize it, and her all black getup looking down on others with her eyes and words as she thought from the podium, asking why the students didn't understand was simple to her. There was a demand for situations like that. I'd certainly never heard about them. I guess instead of 1 hour and 30, it could be 1 hour and 15. I'm a bit tired now and I don't want to compromise the quality of this stream if it even has it if it even has quality. I'm not quite sure if yeah, whatever. And that's it so far for our stream. Thank you for watching part 3 of our Clearing the Backlog World and Economica part episode 1. And thank you. This is Coffee and see you again next stream. Goodbye.